Don't you get sick of the Israel lobby trying to get us into more wars in the Middle East? Or always abusing Palestinians with your tax dollars? It once seemed like the lobby would always have full-spectrum dominance on the foreign policy discussion in D.C. But those days are over. The Council for the National Interest is the America lobby, standing up and pushing back against the Israel lobby's undue influence on Capitol Hill. Go show some support at councilforthenationalinterest.org. That's councilforthenationalinterest.org.
All right, y'all, welcome back. Okay, our first guest on the show today is Katie Taylor. She is with Reprieve, which is the organization of Clive Stafford Smith, the heroic human rights lawyer over there in merry old England. Welcome to the show. How are you doing, Katie?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Very happy to have you here. And I'm sorry I don't have your title and information and things right in front of me like I should. Could you please tell us exactly what's your role there at Reprieve?
Sure. I coordinate a project called Life After Guantanamo, which works with men who've been released from Guantanamo Bay to ensure that they get the rehabilitation support that they need.
I see. Okay, very important work. And of course, Clive has just been absolutely heroic on the issue of Guantanamo Bay all these many years. And one of his clients is Shaker Aamer. Am I saying anything close to right?
Yeah, Shaker Aamer.
Shaker Aamer. Okay. And now, well, I guess go ahead and, first of all, can you give us the thumbnail of his story here?
Sure, of course. So, Shaker is the last British resident who's in Guantanamo. He's in his 14th year now, and he's never been charged with any crime, let alone given any sort of trial. He's been cleared for release twice, which is basically an administrative process by which 6 U.S. defense and security agents, so we're talking like CIA, FBI, DOD, et cetera, have said that he should be released. And despite that, he's not been released. So basically, they made that decision in 2009, and here we are 6 years later, and he's still sitting there in Guantanamo. At the same time, the British government has been basically bending over backwards to say how much they want him back because they view his incarceration there as such an injustice. Prime Minister David Cameron has raised it personally with Obama twice this year, and received assurances that, they were prioritizing the case. But again, here we are. He's still in Guantanamo.
Yeah. All right. Now, so if we could go back to the beginning here real quick, can you tell me how it was that he was captured and who it was pointed their finger at him, said he was somebody he wasn't, or how it was that he ended up in Guantanamo in the first place? Because unfortunately, as you know, law and tradition and fairy tales aside, if you're locked up in any jail, especially Guantanamo Bay, and especially with, brown skin and a beard, you are presumed guilty. So this guy must have done something. Tell me why those lazy cops were going to let this guy go free if the military didn't stop him.
Well, basically, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about how people ended up in Guantanamo. There wasn't a lot of intelligence that was being used initially after 9/11 in places like Afghanistan to make sure that the people who were being captured were actually people who were involved with Al-Qaeda or Taliban. What isn't known, or isn't sort of widely known, but is a really important fact, is that the U.S. flew airplanes over Afghanistan and Pakistan, dropping leaflets promising, average Afghan and Pakistani villagers $5,000 for any foreigner that they turned in. That's not exactly intelligence. So what happened is that, you get people turning in their neighbors, if they happen to be foreigners, for this huge life-changing sum of money to the Americans. It basically meant that they were being sold for bounties. And then once they were under American control, usually in secret prisons in Afghanistan, they were then brutally tortured. And through this torture, they'd admit to, they'd make these false confessions, anything to make the brutal torture stop. It's quite understandable. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, despite the fact that so-called intelligence has been massively discredited, most recently in the Senate intelligence report, somehow this stigma still follows these men.
Yeah.
So people like Shaker, who again has never been charged with a crime, they've never had any evidence of any wrongdoing from him. He's still sitting there in Guantanamo.
Yeah. It's just that image of the orange jumpsuit and the beard and Rumsfeld's voice saying they're the worst of the worst. They'd chew through the cables to kill us all if they could and all this. And it doesn't matter that it's been refuted even by the government itself. That image sticks. That public relations campaign from '02 is still, in effect in people's minds, I guess, to a great degree. And now when I said the lazy cops want to let him go, in fact, as you guys write here and talk about, he's been cleared by the military, by the CIA, and by the Justice Department, right? The spies, the soldiers, and the cops agree to let him go. So why is he still sitting there?
I wish I had an answer to that. I honestly don't. It's ridiculous, and it's to the point where it's actually affecting relations between the U.S. and what is supposedly its closest ally, Britain. There was a delegation of 4 cross-party members of parliament, really high-profile members of parliament, who came to Washington a few months ago to meet with prominent members of the Senate. So they met with Dianne Feinstein, for instance, and said, look, we're asking to have him back because we see this as such a massive injustice. And even they weren't given any sort of answer as to why he's still in Guantanamo.
Yeah. Now, so in Clive's recent piece for The Guardian, again, it's Clive Stafford Smith here from Reprieve. The article is "The Military Ignores Obama's Order to Release Shaker Aamer." And now he's referring to a statement by Obama that, yeah, I want to go ahead and speed that up. If he's been cleared, let's prioritize the case. That's the word in quotes here and linked. And yet, I wonder if possibly Clive makes too much of that public statement. Do we really know that Obama has actually ordered the military to release him, or he just said that he did publicly?
Well, I'm not sure we'll ever really know the answer to that. But I mean, Obama.
Or is there any other reason to think besides that public statement that he actually gave an order? Any other statements by his other, his chief of staff confirming that or anything like that?
Well, I mean, he also told, the Prime Minister, David Cameron, that he was prioritizing the case. So again, I mean.
Oh, yeah. That wasn't just a statement to the press. It was a statement to the Prime Minister.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, at a certain level, we should really be able to take him at his word.
Yeah, on that level, you would think, right?
Right.
The Prime Minister of Great Britain, for crying out loud. All right. And now, I'm sorry to go back to this, but I think it is important for people's understanding because of the success of that PR campaign from 13 years ago. Do you guys have an official story as his lawyers, his representatives, of why you say he was in Afghanistan or Pakistan or wherever he was sold for a bounty to the spies back then?
Sure. And, being in Afghanistan in 2000 was not in itself a crime. I mean, there are multiple reasons why any foreigners would have been in Afghanistan, including we had clients who were charity workers. We had one client who was actually an Al Jazeera cameraman. He was obviously there covering the war. In Shaker's case, he was working for a charity, and what that charity was doing was very important work for a community, digging wells and setting up girls' schools.
And I assume that you have plenty of documentation of all of that to refute, and apparently enough to convince, again, the board back in 2009 to go ahead and clear him for release, right?
Of course. I mean, the CIA, DOD, FBI, it's not like they take these decisions lightly, right?
Certainly not. Yeah, and not in the atmosphere of the way the Republicans were attacking Obama for doing anything at all with Guantanamo. They were obviously being as careful as they possibly could. They weren't going to make a mistake like letting a real Al-Qaeda guy go.
Obviously not.
Right. All right. Well, listen, I think it's so important, the work that you guys do there at Reprieve. And if you didn't do it, it wouldn't get done. So, keep that in mind that it must get done. So thank you for showing up at work, and thank you for doing my show today, Katie.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
All right, y'all, that is Katie Taylor. She is at Reprieve with Clive Stafford Smith. Check out his article in The Guardian. The military ignores Obama's order to release Shaker Aamer from Guantanamo. We'll be right back in a sec. Hey y'all, Scott Horton here for The Future of Freedom, the monthly journal of the Future Freedom Foundation at fff.org/subscribe. Jacob Hornberger, tireless champion of liberty and president of the FFF, brings you the best libertarian writers every month on the topics that need our treatment the most. Read Jacob, Jim Bovard, Anthony Gregory, Wendy McElroy, Joe Stromberg, and more every month in The Future of Freedom. It's just $25 a year for the pocket-sized print edition, $15 to read it online. The Future of Freedom, fff.org/subscribe. Hey, I'll check out the audiobook of Lew Rockwell's Fascism versus Capitalism, narrated by me, Scott Horton, at audible.com. It's a great collection of his essays and speeches on the important tradition of liberty. From medieval history to the Ron Paul Revolution, Rockwell blasts our statist enemies, profiles our greatest libertarian heroes, and prescribes the path forward in the battle against Leviathan. Fascism versus Capitalism by Lew Rockwell for audiobook. Find it at Audible, Amazon, iTunes, or just click in the right margin of my website at scotthorton.org. Hey, y'all, Scott here. First, I want to take a second to thank all the show's listeners, sponsors, and supporters for helping make the show what it is. I literally couldn't do it without you. And now I want to tell you about the newest way to help support the show. Whenever you shop at Amazon.com, stop by scotthorton.org first, and just click the Amazon logo on the right side of the page. That way the show will get a kickback from Amazon's end of the sale. It won't cost you an extra cent. And it's not just books. Amazon.com sells just about everything in the world, except cars, I think. So whatever you need, they've got it. Just click the Amazon logo on the right side of the page at scotthorton.org, or go to scotthorton.org/Amazon.